Hi everybody, my name is Kevin Moriarty and welcome to Waterline Writers. We host this live literature event here in this beautiful gallery on the third Sunday of every month from September to May. And we aim to present a diverse collection of styles and genres, and we do have a pretty diverse collection tonight. If you are a writer, you can participate. All you have to do is send a submission to waterlinewriters@gmail.com. and we will take a look at it and let you know. There is more information about this on our website at waterlinewriters.org. In addition to our featured writers, we're going to have an open mic tonight after our main event. If you're planning to read, there is a 5-minute limit. If you did not get a chance to sign up on your way in, there is a clipboard with a sign-up sheet somewhere over there by that desk. There you go. And you can sign up at the break. We haven't screened any of the open mic material. There may be subjects that could be upsetting to some. If it's something that we deem really inappropriate, we will stop the reading. For those of you who donated $5 at the door, we really appreciate your help. The writers get some of the money. Water Street Studios gets most of the rest. If you buy a book from one of tonight's authors, we will refund your $5 donation. We are recording our event for the event tonight for broadcast on BATV, and we also provide videos on our website after the show. There are some other reading events in the area. Paul Latour's Lit by the Bridge is at Culture Stock in Aurora. The next show is May 15th at 6:30 p.m., and their featured writer for May is an essayist. Her name is Anne Funk. Here in the gallery, they host Wordplay. It's a workshop for poetry and spoken word. Happens here on the 4th Friday of the month, and their next event is April 24th, and it starts at 7. Is that right, Ann? Yeah, it's 7 p.m. Climate crisis solutions, that was the theme of our last event, and it culminates Friday, April 24th, when Dr. GPA presents World Energy Transformation at Water Street Studios here in the gallery. We have a call for poetry. Where are the poets? There's one. There's a few here. Call for poetry with a blues theme. The chosen poems will be displayed in Aurora for Blues Month, which is in June. There's information in the program about that. Sunday, April 26th, 7 p.m., the final session of Galleries Are for Writers 2. That's the session that Anne conducts. The class was incorrectly added to the Water Street Summer Class brochure, so this coming Sunday, April 26th, the week from today, will be the final session. Okay, our first writer, her name is Lynne Handy. She's a member of the St. Charles Writers Group, the Chicago Writers Association, and Sisters in Crime. She has self-published a novel, In the Time of Peacocks, and her work has been published in Clementine Poetry Journal, Memoir Journal, Lark's Fiction Magazine, and Pegasus. Her short story, Rabbit on the Moon, was performed at the Vero Voce Theater. A retired library director, she lives in North Aurora, where she is editing poems for a chapbook. Lynn, please.
Thank you, everybody. I have two short stories. I'm going to read the lighter one first. The name of it is Rabbit on the Moon, and Kevin said that it was performed at Vero Voce. So here we go. Can you hear me? Okay. On the library wall are canvases of Texas bluebonnets, horses silhouetted against umber skies, and a senora blowing dandelion puff on a sunny morning. I leave the gallery, turn a corner. A singer is crooning Yesterday's Wine, a Willie Nelson tune. Entering a festive ballroom, I see the young Willie imitator dressed in a baby blue tuxedo. Gold streamers shudder like snaky dancers each time the air conditioner exhales. Women, their hair sculpted like Roman goddesses, straighten their spines in designer gowns, and their broad-chested men, some with flab rolling over their belts, sport Western-cut jackets with sequined lapels. I am Dulcie Pitt, Executive Director of Cross Timber Library System, CTLS, in Northwest Texas. Prodded by Miranda, my board chair, I have come to a library gala to meet wealthy Texans and sell them on the notion of contributing to literacy programs. I'd rather apply for grants because I don't schmooze well, but here I am in my navy blue dress and a rope of faux pearls. On the way to the table, Miranda introduces me to a state congresswoman in a white pantsuit whom I am supposed to adulate, even though she belongs to the political party that consistently cuts library funding. I override my Presbyterian conscience when I say how much I admire her and follow Miranda through the crowd. She finds our table overlaid with white linen and set with pale orchid china and a half-yard of silverware. My napkin has been fashioned into a swan. I pull its tail feather, spread it across my lap, and discreetly look around. Miranda's mentor, Bunny, heiress to a South Texas ranch spanning 6 counties, sits directly across from me and stares at the empty chair on my right. It crosses my mind that whoever sits there must be important. Then I'm distracted by a beautiful red-headed woman in a pale green dress on the far side of the table. Can it be Greer Garson? Garson married a Texas oil man and lives in Dallas. If the lady is Garson, she is still gorgeous. She must be nearly 90 now. Whoever she is very drunk. She tips over her water glass and a waiter comes to mop up. I feel sad remembering Garson as noble Mrs. Miniver thwarting a wounded Nazi in her kitchen. A large shaggy shadow passes overhead. The man Bunny was waiting for sits beside me. He is about 6'5" tall, elderly, and wears a suit much too big for his frame. He mutters his name, which I don't catch, and says he's a retired dentist, a driller. That's Texan for oil man. He gives me the once-over, reaches a long arm across my plate, and begins pawing my butter knife. I am stunned. He and I lock eyes. His are pale and watery. Do you know Kokopelli? He asks in a soft voice. Often he's depicted with a large phallus. I don't reply. He rubs the bowl of my teaspoon. Perhaps you don't know who he is, he says indulgently. He's a Mesoamerican humpback fertility god, particularly venerated by southwestern Native American tribes. I try for a light tone. I've seen pictures. The driller eyes me. He moves from my teaspoon to my dessert fork. Moistening his lips, he fondles each tine and tells me more about Kokopelli. He's a piper. He wears a feathered headdress. He can be seen on the full moon as Asians see a rabbit. The driller's long shank presses against mine under the table. I move my leg. He finds mine again. I kick his ankle. He makes no sound. Kokopelli is more like Pan, the great reveler, he says. Then with lightning speed, he lunges across my upper torso and passionately strokes my dinner fork. He's quite a fellow, he pants, carries newborns in his hump. When women hear his flute, they flee to the desert. I shove my chair away from the table. He yanks it back, nudging my bosom, and then reaches for my dinner knife and rubs it feverishly. His eyelashes flutter. Kokopelli rapes, but women enjoy his attentions. He pleasures them in the process, you know. Then he leans back in his chair and takes a deep breath. I can't believe that my dinner companions are ignoring the driller's behavior, but they appear to be in another world, speaking in quiet dabs of conversation, not looking my way. But apparently Bunny had been watching. At this point, Miranda leans toward me and hisses a warning. Bunny is playing matchmaker for the redhead and the driller, and he's paying too much attention to me. I should leave the table, find a cab, and go home. I'd considered it when the driller touched my butter knife, but Miranda, who along with 8 other people is my boss, would have been offended. Warily, I look at the driller. Except for my soup spoon, he has violated all my silverware. He and I stare at the pristine, small, bowled utensil. What he does next will determine my course of action. He turns his back. Last year, he said to our table mates in an elegant tone, I hunted tigers in Tanzania. Truly, replies Bunny, his husband. In November, Bunny and I went to Cambodia to see the Irrawaddy dolphins. Jim and I vacationed in Kenya, offers Miranda, on safari, you know. The band plays Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. A streamer breaks free and floats down, draping the driller's shoulders in gold. A server comes with the soup, a mushroom consommé with a wonderful aroma, and sets mine in front of me. I take a sip with my undefiled spoon and clean the rest of my silverware with a sanitizing toilet I carry in my purse. The driller regales his friends with tales of his travels. The redhead continues to glow in the dark. On my way home, I look up at the sky and find the rabbit on the moon. Okay, both my pieces are sort of semi-autobiographical. This one is when I was much younger. And the name of it is Dina, a Warrior. And again, it's semi-autobiographical. My brother has a tumor with tentacles that are choking his brain. In a dark corner of Finn's room, death waits. People speak in low voices. They walk softly. Their bodies sag. I sit in an alcove trying to read, but can't concentrate because my mind is wild. Throwing down the book, I stomp from the house, making loud growling noises, wanting death to fear me. I run past the garden filled with dazzling poppies, purple, orange, crimson, peach, and white. It's the white ones whose egg-shaped pods contain the milk that helps Finn sleep. Sometimes he hurts so much that he thrashes and breaks the spindles on the headboard. When the poppy leaves wither, Mommy slits the pods and collects the sap and boils it with water and lime. It smells musky, like dirty socks. Scum settles on the top. Using a spoon, she lifts it to dry. Then she adds the powder to Finn's apple juice and gives it to him. Only Daddy and I know what Mommy does with the white poppies. The tractor is parked in the barn lot, still hitched to the harrow. Daddy was in the east field when Mommy sent Uncle Herb to fetch him. I run past the machinery, and when I reach the meadow, I fling out my arms and shout, "Death, I won't let you have my brother." To defeat death, I need a sword. Near the creek, I find a stick suitable for jousting. Needing armor to cover my chest, I tear down a patch of blue morning glories, lift it over my head, and pat it into place. Then I rip part of the purple-blossomed clematis from the fence and drape it on my head. I am invincible. Where's my army? A phalanx of cattails grows alongside the creek. They'll do. "Forward, men," I cry. Marching to the house, I stand outside Finn's window and yell, "Death, you're a coward to hide beside a sick boy's bed. Come out." Grandma comes to the window. "Shh, Dina," she says, "you must be quiet when you play outside Finny's window. I am a great warrior." "That's nice, dear," says Grandma. "Just play quietly." Flinging myself on the ground behind the tiger lilies, I part the leaves to spy on the window. Death surely heard me shout. Will it dare show its face? Minutes pass. Nothing happens. My troops are restless. They've grown bored lying in the grass, and I tell them to hush. Then as I wait, something slithers in the tall grass beneath the window. Death is tunneling near the house. A blossom drops in front of my eye, and I swat it away. Leaping to my feet, I shout to the army, "Follow me!" We run past the swing set, the forsythia bushes, and are about to dash into the lane when death detours through the poppies. Blooms sway wildly. I leap into the poppy garden and beat the orientals until they're all down. Then I beat the Shirleys, the reds, the celandines, and the plumes. Finally, all the poppies are destroyed, even the white ones, and their once gorgeous heads bleed all over the ground. Leaving my army, I run along the fence row that parallels the asphalt road. I hear the hum of a motor and see Grandpa and Uncle Herb behind me in the pickup truck. Grandpa calls out, "Dina, get in. It's time to say goodbye to Finny." Grandpa stops the truck and Uncle Herb gets out to chase me. In the middle of the meadow, he grabs me around the waist. I kick, I punch, I yell as loud as I can. I knock off his glasses. He picks them up and carries me to the truck. Grandpa says, "Dina, why do you want to hit Uncle Herb? He's only trying to get you so you can say goodbye to Finny." "I won't." "Now, is that being a nice girl?" he asks. "Poor Finny, he'll want to carry your words to heaven." "No." Uncle Herb holds me firmly on his lap. I burst into tears. "I won't tell Finn goodbye." "Tell him whatever is in your heart," says Uncle Herb. "That's right," says Grandpa. "Just say what you feel, honey." By the time we reach the house, I've settled down. The preacher's gray Chevy is parked in the driveway. I'm sorry I punched and kicked Uncle Herb. I look guiltily at his glasses, which sat crookedly on his nose. In my piggy bank, there's a $10 bill. I'll give it to him to buy new ones. Grandma shakes her head. Look at you, dead flowers hanging from your hair. She starts to remove them, but Uncle Herb says, she's fine, Ma. Leave the flowers alone. Mommy and Daddy are in Finn's room. The preacher sits beside the bed. He offers the chair to me. I sit down and look at my brother's face. Mommy must have given him some of her medicine because he lies unmoving with closed eyes. I find his icy hand and rub it to give him warmth. I am swollen with feelings and don't know what to say. Then his chest inflates, he exhales, and I arch over him to catch his breath in my mouth. Closing my lips, I hold it there, feel it seep into my lungs and spread throughout my body. I am become Finn. He's gone, said the preacher. He begins saying the 23rd Psalm. Mommy cries. My grandparents and uncle come in the room. I go to the alcove and sit for several minutes, feeling Finn settle in my soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Our next writer is Carolyn Cismoski. Carolyn found the spark to delve into the agricultural life in 2009. She apprenticed under seed saver extraordinaire Andrea Berry of Hope Seeds in the Canadian Maritimes, where she learned the intricacies of farming and seed saving. From there, Carolyn found a place in the California fields under the tutelage of noted seed saver Suzanne Ashworth. With a couple of years of farming under her belt, she returned to the land of Lincoln in 2011, where she gained experience at Mint Creek Farm, working with animals and coordinating farm events while running 3-Plaid with an iron fist of love. I have to ask Joe about that later. 2015 will be Carolyn's 7th season farming. And fortunately for us here at Waterline, apparently she also occasionally writes stuff. So please, Carolyn, come on up.
Can you hear me? I can't claim to be a writer, but I do feel honored to be here with you all. This particular essay is the second part of a 2-part series that we did mainly for our members to let them know. Sometimes we'll highlight certain crops. This one in particular was head lettuce, so the first part was more about why we liked it, and then this part that I'm sharing with you today explains why we only grow at certain parts of the season. We don't grow it all year or all summer long. So, if you've read Barbara Kingsolver's Animal Vegetable Miracle, you'll likely recall hearing the tale of the early 20th century California entrepreneurs who plopped some lettuce and artichokes onto boxcars, packed them with ice, and rolled it all eastward. This midwinter lettuce chomping that only the wealthy could afford laid the groundwork for the now commonplace system of moving produce across country and worldwide. Year-long consumption of lettuce, and in turn other types of produce, became affordable and routine with the development of crops bred for cross-country travel, and shortly thereafter with the arrival of the interstate. The major lettuce variety of the time, Great Lakes iceberg, dominated American plates specifically because it was bred to hold up well on a long journey eastward, and was advertised and marketed to families as the greatest thing since sliced bread. There were heavy prices to pay for this convenience that went mostly unforeseen in the mid to late 20th century. First, the common knowledge that our grandparents and great-grandparents held, like which crops grew best during which season, almost completely disappeared from our collective consciousness. Over a fairly short period of time, we forgot the seasonality of lettuce, among other crops, and expected to see it on our plates year-round. Second, we lost a hell of a lot of diversity in our food system. Farmers now had to grow what the market demanded, and in the process stopped growing the myriad varieties that were once enjoyed locally. Many heirlooms took a hit or were lost forever. Third, and perhaps most devastating of all, came the destruction of our landscape. Once peppered with local farms, our land now turned into immense swaths of acreage filled with very little assortment. To keep up with market demand, farmers were persuaded to increase production of only a handful of crops to most of their acres. Part and parcel of this Faustian bargain was trading their traditional organic practices for pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and synthetic fertilizers. The bigger the acreage, the greater the need for these inputs. In a brief moment in time, the former millennia-long focus of building healthy soil and thereby producing healthy, diverse crops now gave way to insanely huge production of a select few crops, and with it, a complete neglect of the soil. Soil has been rendered basically dead across our country due to farming practices that prioritize human-made inputs, like petroleum-based fertilizers, over that of nature. Sure, plants can grow with the addition of synthetic fertilizers, but the nourishment is superficial and the soil is left entirely spent at the end of the year. The methods of agriculture which dominate the globe these days represent nothing more than an empty system that ultimately leads to indelible loss under a thin veil of progress. Of course, our world is very different from that of the not so long ago, when small farms literally sustained small communities and people preserved food to nourish their families through the winter. Although this type of living is still desirable for some, it is no longer necessary for most. However, as long as people are backing local small farms, the world is better for it. Let's bring it back to lettuce. What was once a dinnerscape, always dominated by Great Lakes iceberg, is now a plethora of colors and flavors shared by umpteen varieties offered at local farmers markets and through CSA programs. From old heirlooms to newly bred varieties, your local small farms are doing their part to increase the diversity of their fields and the human palate. For some years now, small farms have been taking on the fight to regain traditional agricultural knowledge, and we are dedicating ourselves to the diversity and health of our land and food system. We strive, along with many other small farms across the country, to pull away that thin veil of progress promised by corporate monoculture pushers. We aren't pleased with how the dominant agricultural paradigm affects the human and environmental health of our country and world, and we aim to do better. As bridges between environmental and public health, every small farm has its own righteous mission. We small farmers are generally united, knowing we each have our own particular role in the greater fight to change the current beastly system that still reigns supreme. To that end, every CSA program and market farm is suitable for different people and their own unique preferences. The system can only work if a diversity of options is offered, even within the local food movement. We believe in the pursuits of our fellow farmers and beckon folks to choose to support one that utterly suits their needs. Supporting any one of us is supporting the whole movement. In the case of our small farm, in addition to CSA, our main goal is to increase our knowledge of seed saving, taking part in the age-old skill of saving a bit of the past for the health of the future. This health of which we speak depends on the fostering and preservation of genetic diversity in our food system. Think of the potato famine in the late 19th century Ireland. Limiting species and varieties can cause devastation on many levels. We hope to join countless other seed savers worldwide to help preserve varieties so that our food system can be healthier for it. King Salver points out that ill health of our food system by citing Vandana Shiva, world-renowned crop ecologist, who says that the majority of our food for the last few decades has come from only 8 plant species. This stands in direct contrast to the diverse food system our ancestors built over many thousands of years, where according to Shiva, some 80,000 plant species were consumed. Though our role may be small, taking part in the rediversification of our food system lies at the foundation of our mission and therefore our farming methods. Back to lettuce we go. Lettuce is the key example we're using to illustrate the mission of our farm, and on a larger scale, the small farm revolution of which we're taking part. We're using it as a symbol since, despite having a tremendous amount of variety of lettuce to choose from these days, thanks to small farmers, the remnants of old Great Lakes iceberg can still be felt, and that lettuce is still consumed year-round by most of us. It's become habitual. We crave the local and fresh in the spring through fall, and in winter we settle for shipments from out west. Again, we understand ours is a different world than in the recent past. Where people once preserved food to sustain themselves through the winter out of necessity, we now seek nourishment from afar out of a different necessity, because it's what our system and way of life demand. Even the most die-hard locavores make exceptions, from bananas to coffee to avocados to, you guessed it, lettuce. So believe me, we're not knocking it. We here at 3 Plaid make plenty of exceptions ourselves. We're simply using lettuce as a platform, one tiny example, to talk about why we grow the way we do, in contrast to that of industrial ag. It's more of an illustration of how we do things rather than a good, old-fashioned soapbox scolding. Lettuce is by nature a cool weather crop. As soon as temperatures begin to warm, the lettuce plant takes its cue and starts to form a bitter, milky white substance throughout its stems and leaves. This is an evolutionary response to keep predators from eating the plant as it attempts to reproduce, known as bolting. Anyone who has tasted a head of lettuce as it's starting to bolt knows the bitterness of which we speak. Breeding techniques have led to longer lettuce eating season on many small farms. Lots of people like that, and we think it's pretty great to an extent as well. However, along with our desire to become seed savers, comes our desire to take part in the seed-saving custom of growing crops in their preferred seasons and observing them as they go to seed. There are perks to this. Take lettuce. Its flavor is best in the cooler months. It makes sense that plants evolve to taste best at certain points of the season. We humans selected them over millennia, paying attention to when they grew healthiest and when they had optimal flavor, and we strive to follow in that tradition. Part of the seed-saving tradition is selecting for crops that have desired traits. And lettuce that lasts a bit longer in the heat is all right by us. All types of natural breeding techniques lead to diversity that is necessary in our food system. However, we are primarily interested in learning about crops and why they inherently do what they do. While we may grow lettuce that can withstand more heat, it will still succumb to summer temperatures at some point. And so we've come up with a 12-week offering of lettuce that is grown to be harvested during its peak of flavor, 6 weeks in the spring and 6 weeks in the fall. For reasons listed above, it makes sense our CSA might be a little different since we have a dual aim to also save seeds. And we think that's okay. Our members are the types who might want to go on this particular food adventure with us, just like the members of other farms are interested in participating in the food adventures of their rockin' farmers. It's what makes this awesome small farm movement gain strength. As our farm grows, we'll continue to strive to offer as much abundance per crop as we can muster for our members. Hopefully one year we will have a large enough greenhouse to help us extend our cool weather production, allowing us to offer lettuce earlier in the spring and later in the fall. But we'll cross that season extension bridge when we get to it. For now, our eyes are on the 12-week prize, and that's the long rather than the short of it.
Thank you, Carolyn. I think anyone that can work Faust and lettuce in the same work can consider themselves a writer. I think you're there. So. Okay, our next writer. Her name is Sandra Marchetti, and she is the author of Confluence, a debut full-length collection of poetry from Sundress Publications. Eating Dog Press also published an illustrated edition of her essays and poetry, A Detail in the Landscape, and her first volume, The Canopy, won Midwest Writing Center's Mississippi Valley Chapbook Contest. Sandy won second prize in Prick of the Spindle's 2014 Poetry Open, and her work appears in, let me take a breath, Subtropics, The Hollands Critic, Sugar House Review, Mid-America Review, Green Mountains Review, Words Without Borders, The Journal, South Dakota Review, Blackbird, Southwest Review, The Rumpus, and even more. Signed copies of her new release, Confluence, are available for purchase tonight. Sandra, please come out.
Thanks so much. I didn't want to have Kevin be out of breath over that. I never know what to list, you know, so sometimes it's hard to leave something off. I'm going to read mostly from my new book, which I actually read from at Waterline before a year ago, maybe a little more, while it was in progress. But now it's a book. So thank you. Yes, 5 years in the making to get this thing published. So it's really exciting. So I'm going to read some from there, and then I'm going to read a few new poems. The first couple are more sensual, and I don't mean that necessarily in the traditional way, but that they try to envelop all 5 senses. So you can see what you think. I think they go along really well with the kind of the agricultural family farms, movement of the last essay. So you can see. Silver. Wheel and lock, your irises drop into mine and sink. My skin a new bird, white in the morning bright and newly downy. Hands against a shoulder scrape, then release between an arm and under. I pull up toward your eye, the triangles of our bodies lie, then slide. A light writes out from us and dies where we cut our shadow. Oh, hum me to a crest, so we buzz with each other's blood, a cicada's clean song of shedding. And then this one is called Lunch, so this one's maybe even more apropos. After a 2-mile walk to the stand, I open a spigot on the raspberries, blush hearts in the hand. The crackers brick against my lips, slide through a stick of butter. I rub dirt from the tomatoes. Sorting the demands of red, orange, pink, cream, I flick stems on the bank, watch them wash downstream. It is noon. The bees are circling for somewhere to land. Fruit breaks on my teeth, spreads through the mouth's star. A galaxy expands. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to kind of move a little bit to dreamscapes. So these next two are sort of dreamy. The first one invokes a little bit of mythology, not too much. I'm not a mythology buff myself, so try to keep it easy. And then the next one is sort of a riff on a couple of poems you might know already, so we'll see. Girl in Stone. I'm sheaving off the morning in swells and scrolls. Athena's curls wave past my back to the sea. Diadems of light come forward in sweet births. The day laurels in their neat way turn to greet me. I slip my sandal up the fluted curves, the steps that roll over, ionic, stomped in place like divots in a loaf. My eyes, without irises, gaze into place. Round ovums, sleep centers, they fall back to sockets, soft as children come to nest beneath my arms. And then this poem is called Breath, which is after a poem by Edward Hirsch. Some of you might be fans of Edward Hirsch. He's a poet who grew up in Chicago, although I think he mostly lives in New York now. And he wrote this poem called Cotton Candy. And this poem references it. I don't have time to read Hirsch's poem tonight, but you should. You should look it up. And it was originally published in the Washington Post, so if you just Google it, it will come up. My poem is called Breath. Tonight the library is near silent. Just a soft blown breeze the ducks receive, a brittle wind within the stacks. I want to read Strand's The Untelling, or of Hirsch's loss as he crossed the Chicago River, drawing in cotton-candied air with his grandfather. I want to hear the suck of the air through the vents and breathe, suffocated at the sweet of it. So, I will read a couple more. I'm going to read kind of the last This book has bookends inside of it. That doesn't mean you won't need something to prop it up if you get a copy. But it does have bookends in it of these sort of really, these Midwestern landscape poems. And there's a lot of Midwestern landscape in this book. But this is kind of the last big hurrah of that in the book. It's just a few pages to the end. It's called Pastoral, appropriately enough. Although it's more of a Ars Poetica, if you know what that is, right? A poem about what? Poetry. Yes, absolutely. So you can decide if it's a pastoral or an Ars Poetica. There is a foot on the ground, a caked and kicked up foot and a half. I crunch my boots in for respite, survey the scape where the year's poems were written, harvested, baled up, when the grass seemed preternaturally green and is now a hiding, gnomish weed. Even the tall grass braces in the right-wise facing snow. Snow is not white, but blue at blue hour, in dusky half-light. A snow machine's owlet eye culls it into Sanskrit piles and mushes, parallel faces. The light writes out from the woods and across the baseball field a field, a watery diamond in spring. This is no late March day. The driver escapes and figure eights and twists around the brown willow diadems. I stand wrung up, by feet fixed in their mush spots. Cold's tight arrow plunges my chest. This is why I go out, I think. It is something to recover from. Wind freezes the skirts of white, swaying earthward. The let is in the house, a let up in the house, and not before. Last year writhes in a heavy, snow-down blanket. The poems are there, too, loose written in the tall grass, hewn to a willow bend, a path's end now before me. And I'm going to read two more from a new project. These are very short, and they're poems about, mostly they're about Wrigley Field, although they're also about the experiences of being a Cubs fan. And I know we have some in the audience, because whenever I read these poems, they come out of the woodwork. These, you know, I feel your pain, or we're going to be over 500 this year. I was telling my father that, I don't know, this is maybe the first time he's been in the audience when I've read these, but that I think we're maybe, if we're 5 games over 500 this year, I'll be happy. I'm not shooting for the moon. But I've written a few of these now, and I'll just read a couple of them really quickly. This one's called Over Sheffield Avenue. I'm playing baseball in the Garden of Eden. Scratch that. I'm writing baseball in the Garden of Eden, where old cars ride street corner curves in our square city, while vendors hawk peanuts. I'm writing baseball out of the Garden of Eden. Clouds sail the blue-gold lake, a tincture Titian never mastered. Players skim the surface grass in pinstriped cottons. Blue hats, blue socks, blue numbers. I'm writing baseball out of the garden. I touch the field to liquefy it, a prism painted deftly on my eye. I'm writing baseball as it never was, from a Sunday on which we won it all. And then this is the last one called Frame, and it's a sonnet, and you can see if you can pick up on that, I don't know. Tucked in the western grandstand, imagine Wrigley. A sliver of light, orange-green beams gone between golden arches as scoreboard plates clink in place. The fourth inning haze filters the sun, a yoke yawning itself undone in the upper deck air to curve against each pillar, straining my gaze in aisle 228. My father gripes and wipes his nose through an April game, the team terrible again, yet players lope over this green hill, and our minds agree to rise and clap for them. Thank you.
Okay, our next writer has already been up here, so I have to go like this now. No, I'm just kidding. Our next writer is Julie Oleszek. Julie has always loved teaching elementary students and writing stories. After 20 years of teaching full-time and writing part-time, she switched gears. Now she writes full-time and substitute teaches in Naperville. After 2.5 years of writing her debut novel, The Fifth Floor, it was released last month. Her book can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and locally at Anderson's in Naperville and Townhouse Books in St. Charles. Julie, please, come on up.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Kevin and Anne. Not sure where you are now. Yeah, hi, Anne. And thank you for inviting me here and for all the volunteers that make this happen and all the audience that came out on such a rainy night. Really appreciate it. I'm going to be reading, as Kevin said, from my debut novel, The Fifth Floor. The Fifth Floor is basically about a young girl who has pretty much a carefree life until a traumatic event happens in her life, and she kind of keeps it secret to herself because it's so traumatic until 10 years later it begins to unravel. A lot of her stresses go unnoticed because she's growing up in a very large family, and if anyone here has ever grown up in a large family, you know that things do go unnoticed. So this is the story of The Fifth Floor, and even though that this is written as fiction, it is based on a lot of actual events, and I wrote it specifically to try to help families and parents deal with teens or children that do go through traumatic events. So chapter 1, and it's not that long actually, chapter 1. The first doctor my mother drags me to is a tall, thin man. He seems to think his direct approach will intimidate me, and maybe it would if I cared, but I don't. I follow him into his office, leaving my mother staring at my back from the waiting room. He climbs behind his enormous desk, piled with papers and files of patients, and motions for me to sit in one of the wingback chairs opposite him in front of his desk. I sit, and he stares. "Stand up and turn around," he says with as little compassion as he can gather. I turn slowly, and the motion has me feeling dizzy. Again he stares, making me uncomfortable. "How old are you?" 17. "Your mother said you haven't eaten in over 3 weeks. Is that true?" I shrug. "If you don't eat, you know, I will be forced to put you into a hospital bed with tubes running down your throat and into your stomach so we can feed you. You don't want that, do you?" "No," I reply. He leans back in his office chair. His clasped hands, except for his 2 index fingers, which are pressed together pointing toward the ceiling, lean steadily against his chest, and his elbows rest on the chair's arms. "So tell me, what's on your mind?" "Nothing." "It's rather difficult to think of nothing, wouldn't you agree?" I am barely breathing, let alone thinking. Just being here is exhausting. "What month is it?" "February?" "No, I think it's March." "March? Do you like high school?" "It's a crapload of..." "Yes," I lie. "Are you involved in after-school activities? Sports? What about friends?" How did I get here? Which way is out? "The door. It's over there." "Where is the waiting room?" There's a short hallway outside this office, past 2 other office doors. The waiting room at the end of the hallway opens to the left. "Are you going to answer my questions, Anna?" "What questions? Did he ask me about my classes?" What questions? Did he ask about my classes? Grades? Months ago, I might have given him the truth. Classes? Crap. Grades? Crap. Today, I stare at my hands, deep in thought of things I am trying desperately to ignore. "No," I whisper, slumping further into my chair. He suppresses a sign of frustration. "But I don't care. I didn't ask for this. I don't want to be here." "Well, young lady, I can see you're in no mood for conversation. Maybe next week you'll be ready to talk." He nods toward the door, then looks at me calmly. He casually pulls a folder from the top of piled papers and begins writing. The moment I crawl into my mother's car, I fall asleep. I never see him again. The same week, I find myself sitting in another doctor's office. "Hello, Anna. I am Dr. Ellison." Dr. Ellison is a woman with purpose. She's about as tall as my 25-year-old sister Marie, who is 5'7", and has an olive complexion like my younger sister Bridge. There is a desk in her office, but she doesn't sit behind it. Instead, she sits in a leather chair that hisses with puffs of air when she sits down. I sit in the same type of chair across from Dr. Ellison, facing a large outside window. "Tell me about yourself," she says. Her voice is real, somewhere between calming and strong. I don't say a word. "If you're not ready to talk, and if you don't mind, then I will. I have 2 little boys at home, and I am grateful to talk with young adults like you who offer more of a meaningful conversation than my little ones." I am captivated by the way she offers information about her home life, as though we are conversing over lunch. Her shoulder-length hair bounces when she talks, much like her words do. "Would you like to play Chinese checkers?" she asks. "There's no need to talk to play, but you will need strategy to win." Her manner is confident without being condescending, and though I don't feel like her equal, I know we are on the same path. "No thanks." "You will know when the time is right," she says. She continues talking about other things, pausing a few times to ask a question, but I offer nothing but a nod. I sense she understands me even though I don't understand myself. Outside the big glass window, the sun sparkles in the blue sky, and the frost growing from the corners of the window reminds me of the bitter cold outside. The clouds are puffy and a brilliant white. The treetops, although completely bare, present themselves as strong bodies of life. It all looks surreal. An hour passes, and I have not spoken more than 2 words. "You are a very sick girl, Anna, and to let you go home is to let you die. I am not willing to allow that to happen." Reality slams against me. Panic begins to rush my chest, squeezing air quickly from my lungs. It is not the mention of death. Considering the way things have been, I have known for some time that dying was inevitable. I'd gotten used to the idea. Hunger pangs had long passed, and my exhaustion had grown heavier every day. I had decided weeks ago that if I should die, it would be virtually painless. And now Dr. Ellison is refusing to let it happen. I fear what her words mean. It will take work to keep myself alive, and I no longer have the drive or the strength to make it happen. Those days are over. No, I can't. I look at Dr. Ellison. Her unspoken words tell me I will do what she asks, even though it might be against my will. "You have a choice," she says, standing up, ready for whatever game has just begun. "We can go peacefully to the hospital, or I can call for assistance." And that is the end of chapter 1.
Thanks, Julie. Our last featured writer tonight is Mary Wagner, who has a kind of an interesting career arc here. She's a former newspaper and magazine journalist, Girl Scout troop leader, truck stop waitress, office temp, judicial clerk, radio talk show host, and criminal prosecutor. Wagner's ongoing legal experience has ranged from handling speeding tickets to arguing and winning several cases before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. She could never stay away from the written word entirely, and inevitably the joy of writing drew her back to the keyboard, fortunately for us. A Chicago native, this mother of 4 and recent new grandmother now lives in rural Wisconsin, where she draws much inspiration for writing from daily walks in the countryside with her dog Lucky and the cat who thinks he's a dog, the Meatball. She counts both wearing spiked heels and learning to wield a cordless drill and chainsaw, another part of the career arc apparently, among her late blooming discoveries. Mary, please come on up.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and very honored to be standing here when I hear all of the talent this is a room full of it, which it's delightful and it's humbling and a little scary, but I'm glad to be here and thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, the career arc, well, the shorter career arc is I started off in newspaper and magazine journalism, went to law school, and then friends talked me into blogging after I'd been a prosecutor for about 5 years. So I still do that, but the blog, Running with Stilettos, developed into, the essays that I was writing there, developed into several books, the latest of which is on the table back there. It's called When the Shoe Fits, and that's kind of a rounded up best of collection of essays. And every word of them is true. If I start writing fiction, I'm going to have to change my name, but everything that is in those books is from my life or some variety of it, my children's lives, my cat's life, whatever. And so there are two takeaways that I would like to give you before I start, and one of which is, if you have friends who believe in you, take their advice and run with it, because I never would have started blogging without the encouragement of my friend and her husband, and I never would have put the essays into books without that encouragement, and they've taken on a life of their own. So let people believe in you. And the other thing is that I never wore shoes like this until I was about 48, so it is never too late to make mid-course corrections. So I'm reading an essay called Mink Recycling, which stems from a mink stole that I ended up getting from my godmother's estate. And that is also one of the essays in the book. I don't know where the mink stole originally came from, or who it had belonged to before it ended up in my godmother's closet. But there were a great many things in Aunt Mary's apartment that I had either walked past over the years while visiting, or had never seen at all. And now that she died, it was a little too late to ask. Amber earrings, probably from her trip to Russia. A commemorative glass nearly as old as I was from a Kentucky Derby. My aunt and I both loved horses. I grabbed the glass immediately as we took inventory of the things in her apartment, preparing for the inevitable estate sale that would follow her funeral. There was a full-length fake lynx coat hanging in the fall closet. This I knew the provenance of. I had helped her buy the coat at an upscale shop in Wisconsin on a bitterly cold day 2 decades earlier. I hadn't seen her wear it in years. But what on earth was my never-married, history-teaching maiden aunt doing with a mink stole? As we sorted and vacuumed and displayed and scrubbed and polished in preparation for the sale, the mink came out of the shadows and into the daylight. It was soft and clean and in good condition, but it obviously changed hands several times. The name monogrammed into the lining didn't belong to anyone in my family, so I guessed that my mother or grandmother must have picked it up for a song at someone else's estate sale years before and brought it home just in case. In case of what? Perhaps Prince Charming would come calling with an invitation to the ball, and it paid to be prepared. But I've never lived in an income bracket where the words, "I brought home a mink anything today," would fit into a conversation about shopping, and I can't think of anybody in the family that it applied to either. So, the mink got priced and tagged and attractively staged where it would be noticed by the foot traffic between the dining room and the kitchen during the sale. A lot of things walked out of the house by the end of the day. Many of them were pieces of heavy furniture that we were glad to be rid of. But the mink was still hanging there at the end of business, plush and furry and forlorn, looking completely out of place in a middle-class, second-story apartment in Chicago. Even the fire sale price slashing we did right at the end of the day did not get it to move. And so, the mink stayed on the premises a while longer, far back in a closet, as most of the other remaining clothing was donated to charity, and the knickknacks were farmed out for sale on commission. Hopelessly languishing out of its proper social bracket, the mink managed to combine the appearance of a haughty society matron in humble surroundings with a touchable, comforting feel of lassie. A few months later, when my German cousin and her husband came to Chicago to visit, we had a family gathering of music and reminiscence at my mother's apartment, and somehow the mink stole came out for an impromptu modeling session. Nobody jumped at it even there. And so I finally brought it home with me to Wisconsin, where it took up an entirely new languishing position in the back of my closet. Well, Prince Charming didn't come calling in a carriage with an invite to dinner at the castle, but a friend of mine who actually owns his own set of white tie and tails invited me to a Viennese ball. I had attended the ball for the first time just the year before, with the man in my life on my arm in a rented tux and a pearl tie tack, and we'd enjoyed ourselves enough to make a second appearance a done deal. The weather that first time had been absolutely balmy, but this time the forecast called for snow showers and temperatures in the low 30s. Really, what's a woman in a strapless gown and opera-length gloves who's channeling her inner Habsburg empress to use for a wrap? Well, out came the mink. Now, I am not a real fur person at all. Many years ago, my first dog got her foot caught in a leg hold trap while we walked in the woods near a river. By the time I freed her leg from that trap, there was blood on both of us. Something like that stays with you. But since then, I've had a knee-jerk reaction to the idea of fur coats and fur stoles and anything that involves killing an animal and displaying its skin simply for status and fashion. Aunt Mary was an animal lover too. I remember that we were both very pleased when we found that fake lynx coat during our shopping adventure. On the other hand, I reasoned, as I worked on my outfit for the ball that year, I was doing a lot more recycling these days in general. More cardboard and paper, more plastic, more metal, more styrofoam. In fact, my recyclables usually outweigh the trash from my house. And you know that rationalization is really big for this woman. And I reasoned the minks that made up this stole probably died at least 60 years ago. It's not like they were part of any viable stream of commerce since the Kennedy administration. So the mink came with me to the ball. My transportation that evening was a tiny Chevy Aveo with a stick shift, not a carriage pulled by a pair of high-stepping hackneys. My date still wore a rented tux. I recycled the opera gloves from last year and rummaged through my jewelry until I found a pair of rhinestone and fake sapphire earrings that I'd had for a good 15 years and had no idea where they came from. I bought a sequined evening purse at a secondhand shop and found a clearance price dress on a bridal website. Frugality ruled the day. But, oh, that mink stole put such a spring in my step. It was so soft. It was so plush, and wearing it was so much fun. There's an older gentleman with magnificent mutton chop whiskers who attends this ball every year, dressed up in character as the 18th century Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph. We have a lot of sport with the fact that in German, my name is Maria Theresa, who was the only female ruler of the Habsburg Empire. The first time we met, he kissed my hand and sang Lily Marlene to me a cappella. I don't know if it was the mink, or the rhinestone tiara, or the architectural underpinning straight from Victoria's Secret, but when we met this year, he said with a twinkle in his eye that I reminded him more of Franz Joseph's mistress than the stodgy Austrian empress. It was quite a night. The mink has moved from the back of my closet to a spot closer to the middle, where I can see it and even take it out and pet it more often, like Lassie. In a middle-class life that mostly revolves around getting to work, weeding the garden, shopping for groceries, and changing the cat's litter box, the mink is never going to get a daily workout. But the next Viennese ball is just a few months away. And I know that along with the gloves and the rhinestones and the sequins and the chandelier earrings the mink stole from Aunt Mary's closet, and I will have at least one more chance to shine.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Well, that's it for the featured writers tonight. Our next event at Waterline is May 17th, and it's the last one of our season. We take the summer off, and then we start up again in September, so May 17th, one more. I'd like to thank all of tonight's writers, Carolyn Cismoski, Lynne Handy, Sandra Marchetti, Julie Oleszek, and Mary Wagner. Tonight's volunteers, Frank Rutledge, Barbara Barrows, Nick Markavichus, Ginny Klespitz, and Paula Garrett. Water Street Studios for letting us use this wonderful room. And as always, most of all, thanks goes to you guys for showing up tonight. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much.